acting in the middle. All of us are trying to go really inward, and suddenly the world calls us back out. So let's just make sure for the next 2 hours we can silence the world. This chant that we're going to sing, of course, many of you know it. It's a favorite among many of us. This is, "How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe?" And we'll go through, how shall I love thee, serve thee, seek thee, and worship thee. And tune into the subject for this morning, which is living for God alone. And as we sing these words, let's ask this question very deeply, consciously. Lord, how can I love you more, serve you more, worship you more, with every breath I breathe?
How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. Just as a fire may burn a whole forest, burn to the root my desire. How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I serve thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I seek thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe? How shall I worship thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe?
How shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe?
Let's focus our minds and our hearts and pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guruji, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, beloved Master, beloved Swamiji, we thank you again and again for bringing this path to us, for giving us a life where we know our true purpose, and for bringing us techniques that help us achieve that purpose. Above all, we thank you for your love, expressed to us directly and also through so many friends and Guru Bhais. Bless us and guide us until we realize thee. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let's meditate just a few minutes.
Good morning, everyone. How lovely to see all of you, your shining faces here, to welcome two of our dearest, dearest friends and guides, Nayaswamis Jyotish and Devi ji. I always joke at these moments that I wish we could be this full every week. I wish we could draw this much energy every week, but we're all working on our magnetism. We don't have that established yet. Today is a very important day for our work here in Mumbai, for our Guru's work here. In many ways, I feel today the work has been established, because it's almost like we're handing the energy that we have brought for the last 5 years into the city, we're handing it into you. A few of your brothers and sister will be, on behalf of all of you, representing you in that process. But this is what Swamiji did for each and every one of us. He helped identify and recognize in us, and then encourage and empower in us our dedication and commitment. And today we have Nayaswamis Jyotish and Devi representing Swamiji in our lives to do that for us and to bring that energy into our work here in the city. We often, introduce them as the spiritual directors of Ananda worldwide, but that is not who they are. That is not their definition. They are lovers of God. And they are here to set our hearts aflame with that same love as well. That's what they do. They do not direct. They are not bosses. They love. And I hope today each of us can receive that love in a way that can transform us, and that can also help empower our commitment and our dedication to this path of self-realization. So I'd like to invite Jyotish ji, Devi ji, thank you so much.
Hello, friends. Sure, Joe is certainly right. We don't see ourselves directing anyone. We see friends and Guru Bhais. We've been coming to Mumbai now since Ananda's been here for many, many years. And some of you we've known for far longer than a decade. I don't know how long, but a long time. And others were just meeting today. But what does time matter? Time is kind of an illusion. The hearts are bonded in any case, and it's really with the energies of friendship and the desire to be together and to support and inspire each other. That's really what Ananda is. It's not, one might say, an organization. There has to be some organization, just as the body has to have an organization. It has to have a head and arms and legs, otherwise it can't maneuver. But the definition of a body is not the heads and arms and the legs. And the definition of a person is definitely not even the body. It's the consciousness. And so, yes, there's got to be some kind of an organization, but the consciousness, as Shurjo said, and very rightly so, the consciousness that draws us all together is our love for God, our desire to deepen that love, and our desire to come together with others who share that, because there's a lot of help that's gained by group magnetism. It was suggested that we talk a little bit today on the subject of how to stay focused on God, even in the midst of a busy life, even in the midst of a busy city with a lot of distractions. And so it's an important subject, because in one sense, it is the struggle of all devotees. What is a devotee? A devotee is really someone who has kind of awakened consciously to the understanding that their fulfillment will come by expanding their consciousness. Their fulfillment will come by their relationship with God, with their understanding that the world is not in and of itself going to be fulfilling, because seeing pictures of food does not fill your stomach. The world outside is, to a certain extent, a phantasma. We think that happiness lies in obtaining something. And we get that thing and we find out, well, that didn't do it. So pretty soon we create another desire, and then we're after that one. And Master used to use wonderful little images. So he said that chasing those desires outside of ourselves is like when you have a donkey and you're trying to get the donkey to carry a burden for you, and donkeys have a nature where they're kind of stubborn. You take a stick and you tie a carrot in front of the donkey's nose, and the donkey wants the carrot, so he steps forward, not realizing that the carrot is tied to a stick that he's carrying, and therefore moves with him. And in that way, the donkey goes along. Well, desires are like that. Desires are a carrot, and we keep moving forward. And if the owner of the donkey, if somehow he manages to swing the carrot and gets it and eats it, the owner of the donkey is clever enough to tie another carrot there. And so it goes. And so God, the owner of our bodies, our donkey bodies, just ties another carrot by desires. And it takes a while to understand that chasing those desires is never going to be very fulfilling. And so as that process happens, the devotee in us, the soul in us, the part of us that is already always connected with God, has always been connected with God, will always be connected with God. One time Master said, there are certain prayers that are absolutely useless. He said, why pray for immortality? That's a useless prayer. Why pray for something you already have? You don't need to pray for that, because that's part of our nature. Joy is part of our nature. We don't need to pray for joy because we already have it. What we do need to pray for is being aware of what we already have. And that's why Master talked about self-realization rather than God-realization, because to a certain extent we already have God. In fact, we already are God. But if you hold that thought, then you're in trouble too. Master said, he who thinks he's God is not God, and he who thinks he is not God is not God. And so just forget it. Just pursue, let your soul lead you on. So the question comes, how do we keep that desire for God? How do we keep it alive, and how do we keep it active in the midst of a busy life in a busy city with a lot of distractions and a lot of demands? Well, yes, cities, and a big city, a busy city. Mumbai is among the busiest cities in the whole world, so there are a lot of distractions here. But it's not as if there aren't distractions somewhere else, because we create the distractions. If Master said that our consciousness has a wave-like motion. We're seeking happiness, so we go and we attain it, and then like a wave, it crests and then it crashes down, and then we're down in the dumps, happy for a little while, down in the dumps for a little while. But Master said the problem is that in between, we're subject to boredom. And so if we would just settle back down and not try to create the waves, he said, but we get bored. So we want to create another wave. And so distractions are self-created. Honestly, I guess maybe it's a factor of age, maybe it's a factor of meditation, whatever. Devi and I can drive through the city and we can look, but there is nothing. No sign, no building, no store, nothing that makes us say to ourselves, even on a subconscious level, oh, let's stop. I want to go buy that. I want to go get that. It's kind of like that wave-like motion has settled down. Well, how does it settle down? One is that meditation is very, very important. And that in part is why this center and centers like it is so important. Because meditation is the foundation for the calming of the mind. And without the calming of the mind, we just can't really make very much progress. Our soul, the other part, of course, we have to start with the heart, with our desires, with our reactive nature, wanting to find God. We have to feed that energy of wanting to find God. But then, because we're talking about distractions that get in the way, let's assume that everybody in this room has a desire to know God, a desire for union. Now, maybe we can strengthen that desire. Certainly, we can strengthen that desire. But nonetheless, you wouldn't be sitting here today if you didn't have that desire. So let's take that as a given. But what gets in the way of us fulfilling that desire? What is it that distracts us? In part, it is simply the restlessness of the mind, or the rajasic energy, one might say. And we need to calm down the restlessness of the mind before we can get very far. Imagine this as a visual image. Let's say that your thoughts are like feathers. So you take a pillow that's got a lot of feathers in it, and you dump that out on a table, and every one of those feathers represents a thought. Well, you dump it out on the table, and some of those feathers are going to fall off the table. And so you go and you pick up this feather and you bring it back, and then you see another one, and you come and you bring it back. And if it were only that, maybe the process would work. The process is when we're restless in meditation, we think, oh, well, I'll go get that thought and I'll bring it back. And nope, I won't think that, and I won't go there. And so we're trying to do all of that. So maybe that would work under calm conditions. But the problem is that there's a big overhead fan turned up at high speed. And so no matter how many times we run and try to pick up restless thoughts, put them back on the table where they aren't going to bother us, they're just going to become restless again. So what is the first thing to do? Well, turn off the fan, of course. Well, meditation is turning off the fan. It's calming the mind. It's, in fact, the fan represents the movement of air. So we work with the movement of air. We work with pranayama. We work with Kriya Yoga. And by these techniques that the masters have brought us, we're able to calm down the mind. So if we're wanting to fight against distractions and keep our consciousness more focused on the goal that will really fulfill us, the finding of God, then meditation, especially morning meditation, is important. I just read something last week and put it in a blog. For those of you who don't know, Devi and I write a weekly blog, and it's free. You can get it, and Shurjo and Narayani can help you find it. Just go on to ananda.org and you can find it easily. But in that blog, Swami Kriyananda had written something many years ago. Master was doing a radio interview, and Master gave general advice for everyone in that radio interview. And he said, meditate an hour and a half a day, usually split between morning and evening. Sometimes people meditate more often than that. Exercise for 15 minutes, walk for 30 minutes, meditate for an hour and a half a day, study for 1 hour, and think of God. Be happy, be joyful during the rest of the time. Very simple little formula. For many of us, though, probably for many in this room, we've already achieved those goals. And if that's true, then good. Let's keep up those good habits. For those of us who haven't, don't worry too much. Just take steps toward it. Because taking steps toward getting there. So if you're not meditating that much, then try to meditate a little bit more. Not so much as an outside discipline, but the recognition that the more you meditate, the calmer the mind is going to become. The calmer the reactive process, the desires of the heart are going to become. And if you want to overcome distractions that pull you away from thinking about God or wanting God, then that's the way to do it, is to calm down the heart and the mind so that they don't pull you away. And so this center and others like it are very valuable because they give you a kind of a matrix where you can come together to meditate. They give you a kind of a support of guru bhais and friends that you can get together, because I don't have to tell you, you know that the associates you have are not necessarily trying to get you to be calm and centered and not wanting a lot of external things, desires. That's not the way the world works. It stirs us up. So gather together with others who want that calmness. That's a very good practice and a very, very good support. Later we're going to ordain some acharyas, and the energy of that is to come together and think about others, try to help them keep their focus on God. The last thing I'll say, and then Devi will talk a little bit, and then we'll have time for some questions too. But the other thing that is very helpful is to serve. Serve in some way, because as we turn our outward energy toward what's service really, it's helping others in some form or another. It might be decorating an altar or whatever. There are dozens of forms of service. But it's the desire to add our energy in such a way that we benefit others through the things that we do. The more selfless we are in that thought, the less we do that thinking I'm going to get something for it, the freer we become, because ultimately the spiritual path is the dissolving of the ego, the dissolving of the sense of I, my, me, mine, and anything that we can do that helps to dissolve that ego will bring us true happiness, which comes from the expansion of consciousness. And so service, meditation, turning the heart's energy toward God, and getting together with others. I would say those are the 4 most important factors in helping combat the distractions that want to pull the mind away from God. And yes, Mumbai is a restless, busy place, but with a lot of traffic jams and a lot of honking and all of that. But Devi and I live in almost an ideal environment. A traffic jam there is two cars where friends are talking to each other. You have to wait 10 seconds until one of them pulls over. That's an Ananda traffic jam. So the outward aspect isn't there, but that doesn't mean that in any environment people don't create their own distractions. So yes, Mumbai and any big city adds to the difficulty, but it does not create the difficulty. We do that for ourselves. We don't need anybody else helping us. We're good at it. So just focus on God as much as you can. Be sure that you meditate every day. Lead a good, healthy life, but don't worry about it too much. Just do what you can and serve. Come together with other devotees, and you'll find that that produces a kind of an aura, a kind of a, one might say, a force field around you. I'll just end by saying that the man that Master said was his second most advanced disciple, Yogacharya Oliver Black. I met him, had the good fortune to meet him and spent some time with him. He said, I have created a bubble of joy around myself, and I don't allow anyone or anything to come in and break my bubble of joy. And you could see it in him. It was just a wonderful energy to be around. So create a bubble, your own bubble of joy, your own force field around you that are supported by these things that I've been talking about. And if you do that, you will become more and more joyful, and you will be resistant to any outside influences that try to come in and break that bubble of joy.
Good morning, and to our friends sitting in the outer chamber, and to our friends online as well. Yesterday, Narayani and Shurjo took us here to show us the center, and oh, what a lovely, lovely place it is. But they explained to us that this is a rather well-known building in Mumbai, the Mumbai Passport Office, or it had been. And I thought that was going in my mind, and I thought, each of you should remember, every time you come into this building, you're applying for a divine passport to God. That's where we want to go, and that's what people came here for, not necessarily for God, but nevertheless. And I also wanted to say, for many of you, the last time we saw you was in the performance of that magnificent play last year that you did at the ashram, and I still relate to you as those parts. Oh, there's Yogananda, and there's this. Yes, indeed, and the wife who, after that play, became a brahmacharini. Oh, in any case, now. The title that Narayani and Shurjo gave us for this talk was Living for God Alone, How to Live for God Alone. And I thought that's kind of a scary title because it kind of makes you a little, for me, even though I've been on the path for a lot of years, oh my gosh, what do I have to give up? What do I have to do different? How can I discipline myself better? And I thought we need to change that title. Because God is joy. And so instead of How to Live for God Alone. Let's call it How to Live for Joy Together. And that for me, wow, that sounds fun. And it is fun. Living for joy with like-minded people, that's what Ananda is. It's a spiritual community without boundaries, without nationalities. In this room we have people right now from Germany and Slovenia and and Estonia, excuse me, and of course Algeria. Oh, isn't that amazing?
I said Canada, even though I only spent 6 months.
California. Spain. Isn't that amazing? Really. Whenever we're in India and people come up to us and they say, "Where are you from?" We don't say U.S., we say California. That really impresses. But how do we live for joy together? So that's really what Master came to show us and what Swami embodied for us. And I would say the first thing is to open your eyes to a childlike sense of wonder. This world is amazing. The things that are going on, nature and clouds. Whenever we would drive in a car with Swamiji, I don't know how it happened, but there would always be, wherever we were, the most beautiful clouds. And I always thought those are Swami clouds. And whenever I see such clouds now, it reminds me of Swamiji. But approach the world with the eyes of a child. You know, it's so beautiful to see children so absorbed in a little flower or a little worm that they find. We don't have to give that up when we become adults. That world of wonder is still there. Once, some of you have heard this story, but the first time I was on a group trip with Swamiji. He invited a small group of people to come with him. He was giving a talk at a very interesting place in California called Mount Shasta. And there's rumors that high beings from higher ages live within the mountain. There's a lot of kind of mystical beliefs about the island, the mountain. Someone asked Master, they said, "Are there higher beings inside Mount Shasta?" And he said, "Oh no, not inside, but there were colonies from a higher age that were established." So in any case, it has a high vibration. And so we were camping out on Mount Shasta, and Swami said, "Let's hike up the mountain trail." So we began hiking, but it was the one day of the year where monarch butterflies, you know, the beautiful orange and black butterflies, rather large, where they lay their eggs on the top of the mountain, and they hatch out by hundreds of thousands, and they ride the air currents down. And we were walking on this little mountain trail. We were walking through clouds of butterflies. And this is the first trip I'd ever been with Swami, and I was thinking, does this happen all the time with him? And he was like the prow of a ship, and the butterflies parted around us. We walked through them like walking through a cloud, and we kept going. But a sense of wonder. Don't become jaded. Don't become bored. Don't become indifferent. When we do that, we shut off what God's trying to show us. There's a beautiful story, and I often feel like this when Jyotish and I are traveling. This is a true story. There was a great saint of India, Swami Ramtirtha, who came to the West, to Seattle, Washington, and specifically. He was a very high soul and a high Swami, but he felt God wanted him to come to America. So somehow he got a ticket, got on this boat, and the boat was docking. He was a small man. And there was a Western man standing next to him, kind of curious. And he said, "Is someone meeting you at the dock?" And Ramtirtha said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, do you know what you're going to do when you land?" And he said, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, do you have any friends here?" "Yes, sir, I have one." "Well, who is it?" "You, sir." And this man was so charmed that he sponsored his whole trip in America. He was a wealthy businessman. But to go through life with that sense of possibilities and wonder, and not, well, if I better do this, because if I don't do this. But this is how Jyotish and I travel. We really often don't know where we're going to sleep or how we're going to get there, but we just say, God's children, He'll take care of us, and He always does. We're at the very end of a 4-month trip, and from Europe and throughout India, many places in India. It's just been, you have to totally just surrender and just say, I have one friend. Who is it? My Guru. And my Guru will sponsor me on this trip wherever I go. So try to keep your hearts open. Don't become shut down to possibilities. And then another, Jyotish mentioned this, but to find ways to serve, and not with a sense of recognition. It's better to do it in ways that no one ever knows or sees. And I remember once, a few years ago, we were at Ananda Village, very stressful time. A lot of difficulties had come up, and it wasn't an easy time. Finally, I got home at the end of the day, and I thought, well, I'll make some soup, and we'll just have a little soup, and that'll be the end of the day. Then the phone rang, and it was a friend, and she was crying, and she said, I got home from work. I'm not feeling well. I don't have any food in the house. Do you think you could bring something over? And I just had sat down, and I thought, I don't want to go out again. I mean, this was not something unseen. It was asked for. But it was very significant to me. So I said, sure, I'll be right over. I just made some soup, and I brought a jar of soup, and I drove over. I was so tired. I just thought, don't fall asleep. But I dropped the soup off. And I'm not saying this to draw attention to myself, but I'm just saying, when you serve beyond what is comfortable, a special blessing comes. And I was driving home, and tears of joy were just pouring down my face. I just said, thank you, God, for showing me that there's always more to give. And if we can live that way, it releases a flow of energy that we just, and something about yourself you never could have known if you didn't push out of the comfort zone. And so find ways, and if they can be ways that no one ever sees or knows that you did, all the better. I love the story of a saintly man who had prayed and was devoted to God for many years, and then finally the Lord, in the form of Krishna, appeared to him, and he said, my child, you have pleased me very much. I grant you any wish you want. And he said, well, there's nothing I want, but I would like the boon, wherever I go in my wanderings, wherever my shadow falls, may that person be healed or uplifted or blessed, but may I never know. And that's the highest form of service, that it's just spontaneous. So a sense of wonder, a sense of service, and then finally to live for joy together. Find ways to expand the boundaries of your heart. Let no person, whatever they may have done or whatever, don't close your heart to anyone. Everyone is God's child. There was, at a certain point in Ananda, there was a very strange fellow who came, and he read autobiography of a yogi, and he wanted to join the community. He was a little different from most of the devotees that came. He was a Hell's Angel, a violent motorcycle gang. And he learned, anyway, he had read autobiography of a yogi, and he wanted to live a spiritual life. So Swamiji accepted him. And he was a strange fellow. Swami gave him the name Ram Leela, Ram's play, because he was very much that. But sometimes at noon, we would often have a meditation. We had a dairy herd for milk, and he would put on these speakers, master chanting Om so loud. I mean, it reverberated through hundreds of acres, and the poor cows, they would run back and forth, and they didn't know what was going on. But because his karma was not good entirely. Oh, and this was funny too. One time, there were some people who were trying to block Ananda's growth, and so Ram Leela came up to Swami and he said, "I know some people who can handle this." And Swami said, no, it's all right, Ram. But then his energy turned, and he began speaking negatively against Swami and Ananda and so forth. And then it was a big public lecture that Swami was giving. There were hundreds of people. And in the very back, there was Ram Leela. Swami's giving a discourse. And, he could have said, "What are you doing here? You tried to harm us and hurt us," and so forth. And he just said, "Ram Leela." And so he had to walk down the center aisle, hundreds of people. And Swami took his little hair and he said, "Ram Leela, you've been a bad boy." And he said, "I know, Swami, I won't do it anymore." He said, "Good boy." And that was all it was. And he didn't stay, but he stayed in touch. He didn't remain at Ananda. But it was such a great example for all of us. If you want to feel God's joy, if you want to feel God's love, don't reject anyone or anything in your life. And to try to discipline yourself, to always see people and events in the highest possible way. And once we were driving with Swamiji, he was driving, and we were going up into the mountains, and it started to snow. And there were these flashing signs, "Stop and put on chains." Do you call them chains in India, or do you ever need them? Anyway, so Swami hit the brakes, but the tires were bald, and so he went into a tailspin. We went into a tailspin, and the car crashed into the side of a bus that was parked by the side of the road. And luckily, no one was hurt, and the car was pretty ruined, but nobody was hurt. And Swami gets out of the bus, and gets out of the car, he looks at the bus, he said, "That's going right to where we were going. Let's get our stuff and get on the bus." So we called up a car tow truck, and they towed the car away. We got our bags and got on the bus. And then all the people on the bus saw what had happened and said, "Oh, sir, your trip is ruined. What a shame." And Swami, he just said, No, we're going to have our vacation still. We're going. But then he told this story. I mean, here he is giving a satsang in the middle of a Greyhound bus, but people were very interested. And he told this story, and I'll end with this. There was a king, and he had...
But first he said, next week I would feel fine. Why wait a week?
Yeah, why waste a week?
Time right now.
Yeah.
And then he told me the story.
And the story, there was a king, and he had a very trusted and wise advisor that he would always listen to. And whatever he told him, he knew that was dharma and truth. But the other advisors were a little bit jealous of this man because he was clearly the king's favorite. And so they were always trying to find a way to put a division between the king and this advisor. So one day the king went hunting, and he was in his chariot. He had a bow and arrow, but somehow he got his finger caught in the string of the bow, and it severed one of his fingers. And the minister wasn't with him, the favored minister, but the word came back that one of the king's fingers had been severed. And this minister had the habit. He was always looked for the highest and the best. Whatever happened, he always said, it's for the best. It's for the best. So these kind of jealous other ministers came up to him and trying to trap and said, the king lost one of his fingers. And he said, it's for the best. It's for the best. And when the king returned, they went and said, do you know what he said? He said it was for the best. And the king was upset. And he said, if that's how he feels, we're going to put him in the dungeon. And so they put him, he was imprisoned, and the other ministers were so happy. Their nefarious scheme had been played out. And then some time passed, and the king's hand healed. Once again, he was out hunting. It has a happy ending, don't worry. People were looking very concerned. So the king went out hunting again, but this time they saw a deer, and he was running, and it took him into a part of the country that they had never been before, and the king got separated from the other assistants, and they came into a land of cannibals, and they caught the king, and they were about to sacrifice him and eat him. But then they looked, and one of his fingers was missing, and they said, oh, we can't sacrifice an imperfect being to our God, and they released him. And the king thought, you know, my favorite minister was right. This was for the best. I would have been killed by those people. And he went and he released this man, and he said, forgive me, you were right, I should have believed in you. And he said, but here, and the man said, it's all for the best, it's all for the best. And then the king said, but here, my dear friend, you've been wasting away in this prison all this time. And the minister said, my lord, if I hadn't been in prison, I would have been with you on that hunting trip. And I have all my fingers. So it's a good story to bear in mind. When adverse things happen, don't jump to conclusions. Try to see it in the most positive light. So wonder, positive thinking, service to others, these are ways that we can live for joy together. God bless you.
Would you like to open it up for some interaction, or how would you?
No, questions.
Or comments.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask, or Suresh?
I just have an observation. As you were sitting over there, Jyotishji, the picture behind you is obviously of Swamiji, and there is such an uncanny resemblance. It's never really hit me till now.
One of my better assets, looking like Swamiji.
Suresh?
It's just a thought which came now. When we do affirmations, which is obviously with a very good intent behind it, is that not some way creating a desire?
Yeah, that's a good question.
What's your opinion?
Yeah, doing affirmations, or in another way of putting it, praying to God for something. Is that not creating a desire? Someone asked Ananda Ma that same question. And she said, yes, it is creating a desire. But it's creating a desire that will end all desires. Whereas all the other desires produce more. And so affirmations, or any activity that brings us into union with God, will bring us to the point of the fulfillment that we're seeking, and then we won't be hungry anymore, and we won't be going out and seeking more. So, yes, another way Swami said sometimes, he said, sometimes if you get a thorn in your hand, you take another thorn and you use that second thorn to get it out. And so our path, affirmations, visualization, prayer, meditation, is the thorn that gets out the deeply embedded thorn of unending desire for things that won't fulfill us.
And, you know, part of what affirmations do is Master talked about the grooves in the brain. We have habitual ways of thinking. Some of those are good, but some of them might not be good, where we immediately jump to a negative conclusion. And so what affirmations do, and especially meditation and Kriya Yoga, what it does, Master says, it changes the grooves in the brain. And modern physiological research shows that there really is truth to that, when not necessarily grooves in the brain, but the researchers who have studied the neurological patterns of people who meditate, there's a different flow of energy in the brain, in the neurological channels, where it's much more in the prefrontal lobe rather than in parts that are associated with anxiety and fear and worry. So these techniques that the great sages of India discovered millennia ago and are being rediscovered around the world, these are the greatest gifts to humanity at this time. It's not more technology, it's not better vaccinations, any of those things. Those are all helpful, more or less. But it's the changing of the neurological patterns so that we are operating from a higher center of awareness. This is really the secret.
Yeah, meditation is the best cure. Joe yesterday was wearing a T-shirt that says, "Yeah, I'm heavily meditated." But reminds me with affirmations. Thursday, at least in America, was Thanksgiving Day, which is a very nice holiday. But some years ago, I wrote an affirmation that is good in this sense, that the affirmation goes, "I am grateful for life exactly as it is. I am thankful for this day. I welcome every hour. Thank you, God. Thank you, God." And if you take an affirmation like that, this one in particular is to help you be grateful for your life, but also to help you move toward contentment. I'm grateful for my life exactly as it is. I don't need this or want that or have to change that. Just as the counselor said, everything is for the best. And so those affirmations, as Devi said, they will help recreate new neural circuits to replace the ones that you want to get rid of. Other questions?
Or maybe, should we
do one more?
One more.
If there is one more.
Okay.
So even if we are grateful and there is just one desire, we always want to burn it out. But it comes again with a vengeance for a few months, then it goes off, then after 2 years it comes up again. What to do with it? Does it happen?
Stick with it. Vandana's asking on behalf of all of us. There are certain desires that come again and again. You know that you don't want them. And you do everything you can to overcome them. And sometimes you achieve that, and then they come up again. Well, these desires come from past lives, and they're deeply rooted. It's something that you have probably practiced for many, many lifetimes, whatever the desire is, reaching out for that. And so it's deeply rooted. But really all we can do is do what we can and then leave it to God. Swami talked about how if you have a nail that is in a board and you're trying to pull it out, You just have to keep pulling. You don't know whether there's that much of the nail left in the board or that much. But you do know that there's something left in the board, and what else can you do except keep pulling? So just keep doing whatever you can, and most of all, offer it up to God and ask for grace.
But the grace with the kriya is that earlier it used to make me cry, but now I laugh about it.
Ah, yes, yeah.
I'll just answer briefly. You know, it isn't quite so easy to say give up all desires, because some desires are motivated by our own dharma, by our own karma and dharma. And so there are some things, maybe you have you're a family, a husband and wife, you have a desire for a child, and you can't seem to have that child. So is that a bad desire? Should you get rid of that desire? Not necessarily. It may be your destiny. But then what you do, instead of anguishing over it, and why can't I have a child? Why? You just give it to God. And you say, God, in your time, in your way, bring me a child, and I am contented. So it's not that you have to cut off all desires, but you have to live in contentment, knowing that God is guiding your life. If you have a relative that's sick and in pain, and you want them to be well, is that a bad desire? No, that's what it should be. But again, just remember that God's in charge of our life. And everything that happens is, if we can allow it to play itself out. And this is what we've seen. You know, Jyotish and I have been a part of Ananda for almost 55 years. It's a long time. We've seen many dramas. We've seen many things that just seemed, this is terrible. How can you let this be happening to us? But then you just have faith, and you just say, God, you must have a plan. And I say this from our own life experience. The things that seem to be the worst often turn out to be the greatest blessings. So it just comes living, maybe not for God alone, but living with God in every aspect of your life. And then you find freedom. And that's the point, is to find freedom. Okay.
If you're going to pray, pray above all to be in tune with God's will, not for some specific thing. Just let me be completely in tune with your will, because God knows much more the intricacies of what needs to work and what we have to go through. We had a very dear friend who was a direct disciple, an American direct disciple of Ananda Ma. She'd been with Ma for some years, and then at some point Ma said to Hari Priya, the time has come, you need to go back to the United States and get married, and you're going to have a child. And Hari Priya said, I don't want to leave your side. Oh, please let me stay, Ma, let me stay. And Ma said, much better to live in the world and long for the ashram than live in the ashram and long for the world. And so the main thing is for us to keep our hearts turned toward God and open to God. And then if something's bothering us, don't pray necessarily to achieve this or to get rid of that. Pray above all, Lord, let me be in tune with you down to the last subconscious whimsical thought that I have. Deep, deep prayer for attunement. That's what will ultimately free us. Okay, so
let's transition now into the second half of our time together, where we will be blessing three of our dearest brothers and sister